I'm Adrienne Enns, and I welcome you to the Intention Sessions podcast. I want to inspire our most intentional living. In each episode, we'll talk to remarkable individuals who will share their authentic journeys and their insights with us. They're going to remind us that life's complexities can be our greatest teachers, and that intentional living can be expressed in an infinite number of ways. I hope you find some inspiration for your most intentional life right here. Today on the podcast, we have Mike Shoreman. Mike Shoreman was a Toronto-based stand-up paddleboard coach until November of 2018 when he was diagnosed with a rare disease, the Ramsay Hunt Syndrome. All at once, he lost his balance, and as a direct consequence, his independence, his coaching business, and his social life. But Mike's story is not about falling down. It's about standing up again. In a public speech competition about the power of positivity, which he won, there's been this incredible viral effect that's been created across social media, touching millions of hearts and triggering the hashtag Paddles Up movement amongst a worldwide community. Mike is an ambassador for several nonprofit organizations and a mental health advocate who fights to break stigmas. Mike is now officially the Unbalanced Paddleboarder. He does inspirational speaking and recently published his book, Crash and Rise. I also want to add to this introduction how I met you, Mike, because I wanted to participate in that same speaking event. So in order to do that, you have to attend one. And so I, was kind of slinked into the back of the room and I was just going to hang out there in the shadows. And a friend of mine had this table and she was very insistent. She's like, you've got to come and sit at our table. And I was like, I kind of feel like hanging out on my own. But nonetheless, I got pushed up there. So I was front and center for that speech that you gave.
Oh, wow.
And I'm just so grateful. And I saw you there in your board shorts and your hat and your jacket. And I just had no idea what to expect. And it was so moving. And I'm just grateful for your storytelling, for your spending time with us, and for all of the incredible work that you're doing. So that's a long way to say welcome.
Yeah. So I think that everybody needs a welcome from you to start their day. That was really lovely. Thank you. And no, it's we've connected once before. And I remember being in the audience that night that you gave your speech, and I was very moved.
Thank you.
So I think, when we take stages as speakers, whether we're speaking to, inspire a room who wants to be uplifted, or whether we're going into a boardroom and we're motivating corporations to be more productive or to be more efficient. We use storytelling and vulnerability comes into that. And I remember sitting there watching you and I remember putting my hand to my chest and going, this is just so good. So good. So thank you.
My pleasure. And yeah, I agree with you. Sometimes for me personally, I found it hard to share that at first. And then the more I started telling it, it felt more important than my ego or shame that I had been carrying. And perhaps you experience the same thing, is that in telling these stories, even when it's, vulnerable and uncomfortable, we all have this connection. So whether the story is the same or different, this is what brings us together and helps us all heal.
It's true. What I found was that it was a release.
Yes.
I worked with a coach to prepare that. I wrote it, but I worked with a coach because that was the first time that I had given a speech publicly.
Wow.
So I needed help with delivery and execution. And she came up to me afterwards. And she said, where did that come from? Like, that wasn't anything like we'd heard. and and it was just like something, you know, deep inside
Yeah.
just needed to get out and breathe. And it was probably the first time that I'd really taken a deep breath in a very long time. I felt it was a huge release and just really healing in the process of doing that.
Amazing. So, in the spirit of another release, will you share this story with our listeners today?
Yes, of course. As you mentioned, I taught stand-up paddleboarding professionally. Most people want their kids to go to law school. I went to the lake.
I love it.
And I was very lucky. Like my family, my friends, they all supported me. And I built up this amazing, amazing life of teaching and empowering people. And one of the greatest gifts I found was seeing the transition from people showing up and being nervous and anxious and scared of the water to going out there and crushing it. And I loved watching the transitions and their confidence and their power grow throughout. And I found it incredibly rewarding. And I did that in Toronto, right in front of the skyline with the planes landing, you know, into Porter. And I do it at sunset. And, you know, these were, you know, just beautiful, picturesque things. And then at the end of my season, because you can only paddleboard in Toronto until, I don't know, through September-ish, I paddleboard still now, January, February, March, but most people don't want to. So I went out to California to look at starting retreats and workshops, and my goal was to be out there for the winter season. And I came back, and all of a sudden I got very, very sick. And it started with an earache, and the pain intensified as the days went on. And I went to a walk-in clinic, and then I went to a hospital. And I remember when I was driving to the hospital, I was parked at a red light, and I looked up, and the red light was the red wasn't in the circle; it was outside of it.
Oh my God.
And I felt shaky, and like the lines were blurred, and I knew something was really wrong. So, you know, they asked, you know, the typical questions like, you know, have you been traveling? And I said, yes, I've been in California. And they said, oh, what were you doing? And I said, oh, I was surfing and paddleboarding. And they said, oh, you must have a dirty water in the ear infection. And I said, yeah, of course that must be it. You're the doctor.
Yeah.
So, you know, I went home, and the symptoms just got worse, and the pain got worse, and it was excruciating. They say it's as painful as when both of your kneecaps are blown out at the same time.
Oh my God.
So I was taking like 4 Tylenol and 4 Advil at the same time every 3 hours. It was excruciating. And then, you know, I was being looked after by my parents at this point. And I came downstairs one morning, and my mom saw me, and I was staggering. Like I remember when my feet touched the ground on the floor, I felt like I was in college. I felt like I was in college again, and I was waking up on a Sunday morning after a big night out, and you know, I was, you know, staggering towards the door, and the stairway downstairs seemed endless. And she just saw me, and she put down her coffee, and, you know, she brought me over to the mirror, and she showed me that my face had dropped. And I was, you know, it was really hard to walk, and now my face was sunken in with paralysis. It looked like I'd had a stroke.
Wow.
And I was also, you know, experiencing nausea, and yeah, so So what it turned out to be was a reactivation of my chickenpox virus as shingles. And when shingles attacks your eyes or your ears, it's classified as Ramsay Hunt Syndrome. And it's rare and it is not fun. So when, we finally got the results back, the doctor said, what do you do for work? And I at this point I was sitting in a chair. I couldn't really walk. And I said, I'm a professional paddleboarder. And he went, oh boy. and then, there was at that point I was so exhausted. Vertigo and dizziness is a huge part of this condition, especially in the early days of it. And for me, it lasted, I still get dizzy when I turn my head, but it's nothing like what it was. But it was incredibly challenging to move. And when I would, like when I'd go to the bathroom or when I'd, attempt to go and get a drink for myself or something like that, it would take me a long time. And it was very challenging. It felt like I was on a carousel going around really fast inside my head. And I was overall just very tired and worn down. And then, as questions came, or as things were being said, eventually, we missed the 72-hour window for treatment. We're going to put you on steroids. We're going to see, but we're not sure. We're going to send you for an MRI to rule out brain damage. The anger and the rage just built.
Yeah.
And I remember going for an MRI. And my dad took me, and when we came back, we were in the car. I was sick in the car, and then I just burst into tears, and I said, "It's all over. Like it's all done."
Yeah. What were you angry about?
I was angry that I'd been to a walk-in and 3 different emergency rooms, and they didn't run tests. They didn't do blood work. They didn't do a CT scan until the 3rd hospital. And that was really hard for me. That was really hard to comprehend that what I was communicating wasn't being heard.
Mm-hmm.
And that what I was presenting wasn't being seen. And I was very angry that overnight my life was going to be very different now because of that. And I became very I shut down emotionally, psychologically.
Yeah.
I remember going into that Christmas, like this all happened in November, and I went into Christmas thinking that this was going to be my last Christmas.
Wow.
And I remember being at my dad's house, and fortunately, like my parents are divorced, and they're both very supportive, and they still have they have a good relationship, and they quickly decided that I'd spend a week or two at my mom's house, and then I'd spend a week or two at my dad's house to give each other a break from looking after me, which they needed, because when something like this happens, it doesn't just happen to you, it happens to everybody.
Yeah.
But I remember being there at Christmas, and I remember my sisters walking in, and they hadn't seen me. This was the first time, and I was excited to see them, but I also didn't want them to see my face.
Yeah.
Significant nerve trauma to the right side of my face. I felt like I looked like a monster, and I Whenever I would go into the bathroom, I would look down so I didn't have to look into the mirror because I didn't want to see it. And it just sent me on this huge mental health journey that which I think a lot of people go through when they go through big life changes. I think mental health attaches itself to it.
Absolutely.
I wasn't expecting that the mental health component was going to be the biggest challenge and the biggest hurdle to get over.
And how did you deal with the mental health aspect?
So, so I went through months of just saying, yeah, I'm okay, I'm fine. I wasn't fine. And it just built and built until it was forced upon me. The conversation was had with both my parents, where they said, you need to get help and you need to get it now. Like it's at that point, and we're gonna be here with you for it, but you have to do it. And I knew I had to do it. There weren't I was in such a dark place that I just said, yeah, like let's just go. But when that day where I was dropped off at the treatment center, that was hitting the biggest low. When I got out of the car and I saw the car drive away, and I just looked up at this building and I thought, oh my gosh, I need to go in here.
I'm familiar with that feeling.
Yeah. It was just a realization of, wow, this is where you are.
It's terrifying.
It is. And then, I went in, and quickly I was given clothes to change into because of, they want to keep bed bugs out, and like I just felt like an alien in my body.
Yeah.
And suddenly, I'm having room checks and people knocking on the door to make sure that I'm okay. And it took a little while for me to feel comfortable talking about it in there. But when I started, I think the floodgates just opened. Like it just, I just started talking about, what I was experiencing and what I was feeling. And by doing that, it made me realize, like I came out of there with a therapist, with a counselor. Like I was double teaming, and it set me up for success. And it made me realize that I can do hard things, and I can get through it.
Yeah.
And that confidence kind of led me to my next big thing. Like only a couple days before going into what I call becoming boy interrupted, I was told that I would never paddleboard again. And 4 weeks after getting treatment, I sat down on a paddleboard for the first time.
What was that like?
Oh, it was amazing.
Yeah.
It was unexpected. It was, I had an opportunity that I'd had in previous years to go and be, I was invited by the Canadian Safe Boating Council to be their media expert. And I didn't say to them, no, I can't do it because I'm using a cane to walk, and this is what's happened. I said, sure, let me bring some friends who are also paddleboarders who have businesses. And when we got there, I just gave them the opportunity, like I invited, I passed on the baton, but I just wanted to go and be there.
Yeah.
And I remember that day saying, I didn't use a cane that day. And I remember saying to one of my friends who was walking me up a series of stairs, I said, do you think they know? And and she just laughed at me and she said, you're walking around like a drunk man. I think everybody knows. But at the end of the day, you know, when the media trucks left and stuff, they said, Mike, why don't you try getting back on a board? And in that moment, I remembered that I can do tough things. I can do really hard things.
Yeah.
And I got back on the board, and it was a beautiful day. And the sun, I remember the sun hitting my face, and I felt like I was at home, even though it was just for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
I felt like I was me again, or I was seeing parts of me again that I hadn't seen in a long time. Yeah.
It's so beautiful. And I hear too, like just in you describing that too, as like, yeah, this sense of coming home and being surrounded by a really supportive community.
Yeah, no, it was a beautiful moment. And that moment, you know, gave me the confidence that I could try it again, and maybe I could go for 5 minutes sitting down. And it was really scary.
Yeah.
You know, getting on a paddleboard on water that, you know, makes you feel sick, and you've got vertigo while you're on it, and you're scared of falling. You know, suddenly I became the people that I was once teaching. It was very scary, but it also, every time that I did it, it gave me the confidence that I could do it again, and maybe I could challenge myself and go for a minute or two longer each time. And then that moment came in July, you know, 3 months later, where I thought, yeah, I'm gonna stand up. I'm gonna do it. And that was amazing, because that moment happened right in front of the CN Tower, at sunset. And you know, I had a friend who was very close by, physically to me in case something happened. But it was a real big moment of triumph, standing up again. And all of it, just, you know, every small win that I would get kind of set me up for my next one. And yeah, and that led to the speech.
Yeah. Like I was like, I don't know if I'm like jumping ahead if I go to the speech, but what inspired you to share it like in that venue, in that way? Like what was the drive behind it?
So I had gone to see a friend. I was in a plaza with my mom getting some food, and I was wearing an eye patch at the time to protect my eye, because when you have facial paralysis, you can't close your eye. So I would wear an eye patch to protect my eye from dirt and wind, and just make sure that, you know, I already had hearing and speech and vision impairments because of that. I didn't want to lose my eyesight. And I was using a cane, and we were in the same plaza as where a friend worked. And I said, do you mind if I just go in quickly and say hi, because I haven't seen her in a long time? And I walked in, and she gave me a hug, and she said, so what's next? What are you doing? And I told her about, you know, appointments, and she said, no. Like, what is your business plan? Like, what's going on with you? and I said, it is 10:30 in the morning. And I'm like, are you drinking? like, look at me. And she just said, I know you. You're not done. This is not over.
You need friends like that.
Yeah, she said, you are one of, like, you're a go-getter. You're the guy who, like, you're everywhere. And this isn't going to slow you down. And I'm going to send you some information for this thing called Speaker Slam. And I want you to take a look at it, because I think it would be, she said, you have a story to tell. And I think you should do it. And I went home, and I went through it, and I sent in my submission, and I kind of just let it go. And then I heard back from them that they wanted me to share this story, and they were all for it, and they were very excited. And then I started really researching what it was. And
I know sometimes it's better when we don't know. What am I saying yes to? All right.
I know. And I remember, looking up and being like, oh, these people have done TED Talks. These people fly around the world and deliver them on stages and have gone viral and have had millions of views. And now I'm stuck. Now I'm locked into doing this. But then I thought, I can do hard things. I can do this. And I kept on telling myself in my head while I was preparing, like I found out that I was doing it in late May, early June, and I was going to be doing it in August. And I remember saying consciously to myself, all these people who've done TED Talks and are, flying around the world doing speeches, they're working right now. I'm at home recovering and I've got tons of time. I can do this.
Yeah.
like I've got an advantage that they don't.
I love it.
And I'm just going to throw myself into this with writing and rewriting and just go for it. And all I really wanted to do was, it was a room of 300. And I think most people who do it will say, like, I want to uplift. If I've uplifted one person in the room, I'll consider that a success.
Absolutely.
I said to myself, if I can uplift 3.
Okay, good. I love it. Raise the bar.
Yeah. I was like, if I could uplift 3 of 300, then I'll consider it a success. And also, my mom and my dad were both going to be there. So, that's 2 out of 3 people.
You're hilarious.
But I didn't expect what happened.
So I know what happened, but tell people listening, what happened?
Well, I got to the venue very early and I got changed and I chose to wear a suit jacket and be very business on top, and then wear board shorts and flip-flops.
Yeah, that's what I was describing. I was like, what's happening here?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, no, I wanted to make this visually, not just verbally, but put on a 6-minute show and really entertain. And I remember getting on stage and I remember asking beforehand, can we put a chair on stage just in case I need to take a break? And I've looked back at the video a couple times and it's on the video and I'm struggling to get up the stairs on the stage. And Rena, the event coordinator, goes, "Come on, Mike, stop being so dramatic." But I wasn't. Like I was really climbing those stairs.
Yeah.
And I started, I remember the lights being blinding and I couldn't see past the first row, which was really helpful.
Yeah.
It was really good. I could see the first row, but I couldn't see anybody else, which was really great. And I, had this chair and I started with it standing up and I sat down on it a few times throughout when I needed to. And I told the story of building this beautiful life that I was proud of, and then losing my identity when it all fell apart. And I talked about the mental health journey, and I weaved in a universal message of saying yes to ourselves when we don't think we can do something, and how each yes sets us up for our next. And I remember when it finished, it was, I used to do something with my students at the end of my paddleboarding lessons where I'd command them like a soldier. I'd put them in a row, and I'd command them to put their paddles up in the air, like warriors. And it was a moment of celebration and of their power and their confidence, and how far they'd come. And I ended my speech by doing that. And I nearly fell down when I did it.
And what do you say when you do it?
You say paddles up.
Yeah.
And all the paddles go up. And, in paddleboarding, you have the most balance when your paddle is in the water. So to lift your paddle out of the water, it's a moment where you feel really confident and strong. And I finished it. And although I have hearing impairment still, I went to a concert that summer and I had to put in cotton into my ear. But I've never heard a sound like that that night. As soon as I finished, I couldn't see anything, but it was crazy loud in there.
I was part of it. I was part of the yelling. And it was, as I'm hearing, it's fun to hear you describe it because I was in the front row, so I feel like I really experienced, where somebody's, you're just experiencing the thing, just there's nothing in the way. And yeah, it was so moving and heart-wrenching and motivating and inspirational. And like you deserved every last scream.
It seemed like it went on forever. Like
I think it did.
It did. It went on for several minutes. And it was crazy I remember going outside and I was with my friend, and at the, there's a few intermissions and we were outside, and I said, did I do it? And she said, what do you want me to say here? and I said, I want you to be honest with me. I want you to tell me, like, was it, like, how did I do? And she said, whatever happens, you changed a lot of people's lives tonight.
Yeah.
And I was happy. I was really just filled with joy. And then I went, and then, I went back in and they announced the winners, and they go from, they announced the third and then the second place. And I remember as soon as they announced the second place, I knew then. And I was just so excited. It felt like this really hard emotional trauma was, there was purpose in this.
Yeah.
And that it was being felt and it was being heard and being acknowledged by other people seeing themselves in that, from whatever they'd experienced. And then, I went home and, people are calling me like, you're like Kelly Clarkson and like all this crazy stuff. And I remember going home and I was celebrating, and, there was champagne and cookies and all this stuff. And then I went out and, my mom said, okay, well, you're going to take out the garbage. And, and I was like, oh yeah, real life continues now. Like, okay. And I'd stagger down the driveway with some blue boxes, and it would, it takes me longer than
gotta keep it real
than it once did, but it was just one of those very special moments. And then all the craziness started from there, really.
Yeah. Just really opened up so much, didn't it?
Yeah, just the virality of it. It went viral on several I think it's gone viral, 17, 18, 19 times now. And every time it does, like when Jay Shetty shares it, or it goes on Ashton Kutcher's platform, or Power of Positivity, or whatever, the likes and all of that are unimportant. But what it has done is, the millions of views have allowed people to see it, and the comments were amazing.
Yeah.
Unbalanced Paddleboarder. I just watched your speech. I've got Parkinson's, or I've got multiple sclerosis, or my father's dealing with cancer, and I'm going to show in this speech. And it allowed me to connect with people from all around the world, who were also struggling. And while I felt very alone in my journey, I quickly realized from that how not alone I was.
It's incredible. And I know that, since then you've written this book and you've done, you're doing a lot of, media and speaking. And what is the core message, like, for that person who is where you were, whatever their journey, who is, struggling, maybe feeling alone? Like, what do you want them to know?
Yeah. So the book is, part biographical, part self-help. And I think the overall message is that when you get knocked down off your paddleboard in life, whether you paddleboard or not, because we all get knocked down, is to get up and to get going again. And it might be challenging, and it might be a long road ahead, but we are resilient, and you can do it.
So amazing. So what's next? What's happening next?
Oh, so much. So this week I'm headlining an event in England. I'm actually speaking with this year's first ever Time Magazine Kid of the Year.
Awesome.
Jitinjali Rao. Yeah. So that's actually what's up next. There's quite a bit of media stuff coming up this spring. There's a lot of speaking engagements coming up. There's a lot of stuff with the book. I'm really looking forward to the world opening up a little bit more.
Yes.
I'm hoping. I think that'll make it easier for speakers and just people who travel a lot for work. This has been a really challenging time, so I'm really looking forward to that. And then this summer, I'm doing a paddle for. I'm a mental health advocate with an organization in Canada called Jack.org, and I'm doing a big paddle fundraiser this summer for them. So I will be the first person to paddleboard from the US to Canada.
Awesome.
So raising money for Jack.org, and just looking forward to life right now, and kind of living each day with excitement and joy.
I love it. I just want to say thank you so much. I just, I was thinking today before we were hopping on here, as I described at the outset of this, kind of got shoved up to that chair, and, you just never know why you are somewhere, and just that our paths crossed, and that this, a couple years later, we can have this conversation, and I hope it continues, but you are just this incredible inspiration. And we're going to put in the show notes, about that original Speaker Slam video, where people can check it out, where people can find you now, how they can get your book. But if there's any other contact information that you want to share, I invite you to do that. And if there's anything we missed, or any final words that you want to offer, the stage is yours.
So thank you for holding this space.
My pleasure.
I think what you're doing here is really remarkable. And I just want to say thank you, first of all.
Thank you.
People can find me I'm very active on social media. They can find me on Facebook. I'm Mike Shoreman. My page is Mike Shoreman the Unbalanced Paddleboarder. My Instagram is at the Unbalanced Paddleboarder. I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. The book is available at Indigo Chapters and Kohl's, Barnes and Noble, Amazon. And no, I'm just really, really grateful. So thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for listening. May some of the wisdom shared here inspire your most intentional living. For more information about this episode, this podcast, intentional living, and my work in the world, please visit mayyouknowjoy.com. You can also find my May You Know Joy and Seeds of Intention cards there, and my book, Intentional Days. You'll also find details for the Intentional Days membership, where you can gain access to a thriving community of intentional souls and lots of regular inspiration. I've got you covered. Until next time, I wish you great joy and many intentional days.